And this is Ed back here in San Diego live, and with us in studio in what I call the global meeting room is Jeff Lash, who's VP Product Development for Insperity. Insperity's, I read, is 40 years old. Is that correct?
We just celebrated our 40th anniversary. Yep.
So the people who invented Insperity, that was another name way back uh, turn of the century, and Insperity, though, is a genius name, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I joined the company a little over a year ago, so I was not with it in those days, but I know it started out as administraff, and then I think yeah, the rebranding is Insperity, but we are, I think, pretty well established in the market now. And I was just over at the Expo Hall this morning and last night, and lots of people stopping by that are familiar with Insperity, clients of ours, folks that know the name out there in the market.
Okay, so the concept I read is all about outsourcing HR to what, mid-sized companies?
Yeah, so Insperity focuses on helping small and mid-sized businesses really accelerate their growth. And you think about, the story I use, as I mentioned, I just joined the company last year. So when I talk to people who are like, "Hey, Jeff, what are you doing now? What does Insperity do?" The way I describe it is, imagine you got a 25 person business, right? You got into business for a certain reason. You've got, your employees, your business is doing well, but there's reasons you got into business to provide a service, to produce a product. You didn't get into business to handle compliance issues in different states that you're hiring. You didn't get into business to figure out the intricacies of payroll tax deductions. You didn't get into business to figure out things like that, but you need to provide that, right? I think all business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders recognize that. But we work with a lot of small companies that don't have HR departments, or they don't have a full-time HR person, or even you've got one person supporting dozens or hundreds of people, and they really need a lot of help and support with a lot of the administration, a lot of the HR services and people support, but also the technology. And really, we partner with businesses to help them grow by taking a lot of that work off their hands and allowing the HR folks to focus on that strategic HR work, and allowing business owners to focus on why they got into business, which is to grow their business.
So I don't want you to divulge anything, of course, that you're not supposed to, or whatever. This is not a gotcha thing.
Yeah.
This is just conversation, friendly business atmosphere. I call it the global meeting room. Uh, and the tagline that I developed is the psychologically safe space for business intros and conversations and building rapport. End of tagline. um, my client and friend Ron Cooper should be joining us any minute here, but we're going to continue. And I was reading some details here about your company helping employees navigate workplace change. Well, AI comes to mind immediately, and not to mention confusion out there in the world about so many things that impact business
Mm-hmm.
and people. And you can get into that as you wish. I'm just going to read a couple of headlines here for the audience to get into this. Okay, once again, helping employees navigate workplace change, building trust during AI adoption, trust before tech. That's a good one. I like that. Power skills are becoming more important. Power meaning communication skills. Is that correct? The evolving role of middle managers, because that's where the rubber meets the road,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it? Yeah, it's that level, getting the middle managers trained to train,
Yep.
because that's going to build, it's going to create an atmosphere of trust and learning together and teamwork. Dealing with a perception gap, I think we're going to need some explanation about all that. Managers need support to lead effectively, support from above and below.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. All right, broader workplace trends going on. The future of work is about balancing tech and people. Tech can't happen without people. That's the key.
Yep.
Organizations need to rethink how they develop early career talent. So that's onboarding, assessment, and then what, redesigning.
I think, yeah, just it starts with getting their foot in the door, but I think also how do we, especially as you mentioned, in the face of lots of change with AI, right? There are a lot of entry level opportunities that may not exist or that are very different now with AI than they were in previously. So onboarding, mentoring, skill development, career pathways, I think things like that. To how do we get the right people in and hopefully keep and grow them?
So there's something here as we come to a close of this intro. Insperity perspectives. Um, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but just headlines, and I want you to take over here. Insperity perspective, helping businesses navigate change with confidence. Technology paired with expertise drives better outcomes. Finally, solutions designed to meet organizations where they are. Well, let's start with that one. What does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, so Insperity offers a range of solutions for companies from 5 people to 5,000, or somewhere around that. So, we understand that businesses are unique and different. A 25-person company is different than a 2,500 person company. I think it's also looking at growth rates. So, for example, I was talking with one of my colleagues earlier, and he was talking about a potential client he was talking to that had 250 people, and we were talking about which of our products and services would be right for them. And I said, well, they have 250 employees, but the question I have is, a year ago, did they have 250 or did they have 100? Right? You think about a business that is fairly stable, has been around for years or decades. That's a very different business profile than a company that has 250 people today, but had 100 a year ago, and is going to have 1,000 a year from now, right? So, Insperity is really designed around different offerings that we have for different companies based on their size, but also their growth and kind of what their technology needs are, what their services needs are. So, there's some common challenges that I think businesses and organizations of all sizes face. They want to, streamline some of their administration. They want to help with their workforce management, but obviously depending on businesses and their stage of growth and where they are in their trajectory, they may have very different needs. And that's where we provide different solutions, hopefully to meet clients at different stages of their business life.
So talk to the audience by talking to me. The idea of feedback or feed forward uh, from the staff, from the employees. Again, this is the middle manager, and change is coming. Change is in the news. AI, am I going to lose my job?
Yep.
Are you trying to get rid of me? That fear.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think let's talk about change in general first. We could talk about AI being obviously a big change that people are facing right now, but not the only one. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a lot of fear. I think uncertainty is just causes fear, and I think change is change, whether it's good change or bad change. I know that sounds a little trite, but even change that is good is still change. People are used to doing things a certain way. They're used to certain technologies. They're used to certain processes. Even if they don't like them and they know that something's going to be improved, it's still change because it's just something we're not used to. So, I think one of the things we've found is that regardless of the change that is being introduced, clarity is a really important part of resisting change. That gets to our the role of middle managers. But I think employees are generally more likely to embrace a change when they understand why it's happening, right? No one wants to change for change's sake, but if they understand, oh, what's the end goal? How is this going to help clients? How is this going to help my department? How is this going to help me? What's the outcome that we're looking for? And why do we even need to change in the first place? So I think when employees can understand why a change is happening, how that change impacts them, and what that success looks like moving forward, I think then they're much more likely to understand the rationale and more likely to embrace change. It still will be a challenge, but they're more likely to be open to the idea of changing and be receptive to new ways of doing things.
So feedback, should it be Daily, weekly, certainly not annual.
Employee feedback?
Yeah. I
Yeah, I
know
mean,
the manager talking with employees. It's almost like is it a team approach or is it I thou?
I think, I look at it as there's a number of different ways that an organization can get feedback. There's formal feedback approaches like a employee, annual survey, which is, annually is a pretty common cadence for that. Um, but usually that's a much more top down, executive management or corporate HR, kind of doing a large scale employee survey. That's actually one of the things that we help our clients with because a lot of people want to do that. There's sometimes more
It's sort
infrequent.
of expected. Yeah.
It's expected, yeah, it's expected. But that's usually obviously you can only do it once or twice a year, maybe, and so you have that, and that usually covers a wide range of topics. Then sometimes there are pulse surveys that are done more infrequently and sometimes around specific topics. Say, when people transitioned to working from home in COVID, right? I think there was a lot more. I suspect there's a lot more pulse surveys being done off that annual cadence because it was all right. We need to keep the pulse of our employees because we aren't physically seeing them every day, but also because we want to understand how are they adapting and we need more rapid feedback. And then I think you have other layers down. I mean, as a manager, I've been managing people for 20 years. I'm getting feedback informally from my team on a regular basis. Not every Monday you must do this, but team meetings, one-on-ones, just ongoing conversations. So I think good managers are using those different levels, right? So I personally, like, I get a lot of good insight from the all employee survey, but I also get a lot of good insight from regular weekly conversations and impact. And I think that's where, really the role of middle managers being that critical link when there are changes being introduced to the organization. They're the ones who are seeing on a day-to-day basis, how is this going? Are people receptive? What challenges are people having to it? A lot of times people want to change, but they may not have all the resources they need or all the support they need. So, when you talk about feedback, that sort of regular, daily, weekly, whatever feedback can really help rather than just throwing something out there and kind of crossing our fingers and hoping it works.
So AI getting a lot of press, of course. Um, I use Gemini a lot, but I also test the others. Gemini is really easy. I happen to be a June birthday guy, so Gemini is my thing. And I told Gemini that, so they've been very helpful.
It remembers it, wishes you a happy birthday. Yeah.
Okay, so do you say please and thank you after you?
Do I? Well, it's interesting. So I mean, just on my personal use,
I do.
AI systems are designed. There's lots of research and articles out there. They're designed to be supportive and complimentary. Right? It'll say, "Oh, that's a great idea," even if it may not necessarily be a great idea. I've actually on my I use some AI tools at work, and then I also use AI tools at home. For one of the AI tools I use at home, I've actually specifically instructed it to not be to challenge me, to not say great idea, Jeff, unless it believes a good idea, right? So a lot of people don't know this, but you can tweak these tools to help support. So yeah, I view AI as a thought partner for me personally. I do say please and thank you sometimes, probably not all the time, but yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing how you can use it as a really, I don't want to say a relationship, but really a co-thinker, a collaborator on so many things. I'll just go back to your other point about, kind of if we connect these two things together, right? You said, AI is, I think, on a lot of people's minds. I think a lot of it is fear. And you look at the headlines, right? Talking about, oh, AI is, this company's laying all these people off because of AI. Well, is it really AI or is that just the excuse? I think a lot of people are concerned about, is AI going to take my job? I've been lucky to be part of lots of different technology shifts over the years. I remember when I was little and growing up, my dad bringing home one of the first Macintoshes, right? And that was like a huge adjustment in terms of personal computers. I remember the early days of the internet. I remember the introduction of Wi-Fi. I remember the introduction of the iPhone and mobile technology, right? So there's been a number of shifts that I and probably lots of the listeners here have been privy to. I think AI definitely is up there. AI has been around, but I think for a lot of us, when we saw Chat GPT and used it for the first time, kind of our minds just went like, this is radical. So definitely this is unique, but at the same time, it is a technology. Technologies exist to solve a problem. AI adoption is really there should be to solve a problem. And I think AI adoption requires human leadership. I think a lot of organizations, Insperity's included, are looking at how AI can improve productivity and streamline work. But the reality is technology alone is not going to, drive successful transformation. Just saying, hey, everyone has access to Gemini, everyone has access to OpenAI, ChatGPT, like that's not going to drive change. And I think where probably people have a lot of fear and concern is because they're worried, is this going to take my job, without any sort of guidance and kind of leadership and direction in terms of, hey, here's how to use AI effectively, and here's how we see AI helping you, and here's how we see AI changing your job. But I think without that leadership at the executive level and at the middle manager level, then people get concerned and they go to the worst place and they think about fear. But if there's communication, if there's change management efforts, if there's employee development programs to help people use AI effectively, and to say, hey, Edwin, this manual task that you spend 8 hours a week doing, we're going to have AI do that for you, but we're going to have you spend your 8 hours on doing something more productive and beneficial, and that's going to help the company, and that's going to help you grow as a person. I think that's really the opportunity.
So just as an aside, my background long time is in the PR, marketing, and sales, of course, but I was print publishing. And in the early days, I was in front of the camera selling things like TV commercials. I was hired as not an actor, as a talker.
Yeah.
Some people call it acting. Anyway, we're publishing a magazine used for recruitment, talent recruitment and relocation. I named it California Bound. And we were using designers, and they were setting type line by line, and then doing the paste up, and then doing the design work as well. It's expensive.
Yeah.
During the 80s, early 80s. And then Apple came up with a desktop publishing,
Yep.
and we looked into it. And at the time I was in LA, Century City. And that was the core center of that product development, product announcement, rollout. And so we used it to put together our magazines. And we talked to the Computer World magazine, I think was owned by Steve Jobs at the time. The magazine promoted what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And so it was such a hit that they put us on their front cover. Mm. Okay. And so my designer, just a guy down the street, but really good, creative Hollywood kind of a setup. And he was worried about him losing the contract. All right. And it was several thousand a year. So I said, no, we want you to learn how to do this thing so that my team, the office team, which was basically my wife at the time and the ladies that she hired, she handled the inside, I handled the outside business. And so he said, okay, I'll pay you the same amount of money. You won't lose any money, but we want to use your skills differently. In other words, design more. So Steve Jobs loved what we were doing as an example and put us on the cover, and Apple bought thousands of these finished magazines and used it as their own marketing tool, not to mention as a recruitment tool. Just an aside story.
Yeah.
We were, on the cutting edge, early adopter, and we lucked out.
I mean, I think that's an example where someone, if your job at that time was, physically setting type, you might be worried about, oh my gosh, is desktop publishing going to come and take my job? And, those jobs
Yes.
go away, but they also change, right? New jobs open up, right?
Right.
The example I always use is, you don't often see an elevator operator anymore, right? That used to be that you had to have a person. So those jobs went away, but there are way more elevators now than there were 100 years ago, and those jobs turned into different jobs and better jobs. So I think as with any technology change, whether it be desktop publishing, the internet, mobile, AI, right? There are some jobs that will go away, but they're not going to go away overnight. And I think businesses have a opportunity, if not an obligation, to help their employees understand how can we use this technology to make you more effective, to make you more efficient. And yeah, maybe your job is going to change a bit, but that also means hopefully you could be doing things that add more value and also probably are a lot more enjoyable and pleasurable and gratifying to work on.
So what we're talking about is a hardcore example of exactly what's going on now. It's a big unknown what AI can do, other than we've all tested it already to some extent. How I've tested it, and believe me, with tender fingers, because not knowing what I was getting into, was that I need to market my business to corporate customers uh, and give me 5 reasons why my product is a good thing for a middle manager or whatever. And then Gemini spits out this long thing. I could never do that.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then I started to apply some of that, and it worked.
I mean, I like to say no one wakes up in the morning and wants a product, right? No one wakes up and wants a technology. No one wants AI. They want an outcome. They want some sort of impact. They want
Right.
something at the end of the
Yeah.
process.
Result.
They want results, exactly. AI can be a very efficient, effective way to get there, right? But I used to say no one wants a website. Like we have to have websites, but no one wants a website. They want to be able to buy something online. They want to be able to advertise their customers, right? Like that's the end goal you want. It's just this is a way to get there. And I look at AI in a very similar way. It's a very unique and very different technology, but it's still at the end of the day, it should be applied to solving problems. And I think businesses who can communicate that way, again, like to help take out some of the uncertainty and clearly communicate, why we are adopting AI within our business, how it'll be used, and also what support we're going to provide to employees along the way, I think are much more likely to have engaged workforces and be able to, funnel that energy into productive uses of AI rather than a lot of concern and hand wringing.
So with just a come full circle on this journey that I took just not even a couple of months ago, uh, I said, well, I have the global meeting room, which is a broadcast studio using Zoom and YouTube. Uh, how do I reach customers for advertising investor support? And so as well, and and then they answered me. The Gemini answered me, and it was long and detailed, but very easy to read and understand. And then I said, thank you. This is helpful. And then Gemini sent me a question right away after I said that and did the up sign on it. Uh, and it says, would you like me to give you a one-page brief item by item aimed at CEOs, or would you rather I dumb it down into a lower level explanation routine? So I said, give me both,
Yeah.
please. And they did. And
Yeah.
it's like 10 minutes. And it might take me 2 weeks, if possible at all, for me to generate that. And then I'd
Yeah.
be laboring over it and suffering and worrying.
I think but this all started with you providing it an input, right? And I think that's to me the key is right. Like
Yeah,
the tools are only as good as the
which was
direction and guidance
clear.
you give them. Yeah, that has to be clear. And
Yeah.
I think there's ways, there's ways that the AI tools will prompt you and try to help your input. But at the end of the day, you've got to give them a starting point and give them direction and clarity. And I think that's a great example. And I think this is where, again, technology is great and these technologies are amazing, and we're only scratching the surface of what they can do. But I think as these routine tasks become more automated, those human skills become more important, right? So an AI tool cannot handle communication with your colleagues and convincing someone to get on board with an idea. An AI cannot sell sell to an advertiser directly. They can help make your message refined, but still you have to do the outreach, the communication. I think things like helping people become more adaptable, the emotional intelligence of working in a cross-functional environment, I think things like that are going to be more important. And yes, we can use AI to help shape our arguments and come up with new ideas. And, oh, I need a one-page version for the executives and I need a detailed version for the technology people, but it's a human providing that input. It's human taking those artifacts and using them. And so I think the employees who are able to pair those technical capabilities of using AI with those subject matter expertise, those interpersonal skills, really, that's where the power comes from.
So for middle manager in a company of 10,000 employees, or 1,000 or 500 or whatever, but bigger size, not just small. This is a must to build trust and maybe a teamwork and make a game out of it, about, okay, how to try to use, and then there's no right or wrongs, no penalties and stuff like that, no threats. And with a middle manager having or setting up teams of employees, sort of a game playing thing, okay, team A, how would come up with a plan, a product idea, or a plan of implementation? How would you like to talk to Gemini about that, or ChatGPT?
One of the things I've seen work is really sharing best practices, right? So you develop a way of using AI, you share that with your peer, then the manager shares that with the whole team, right? Because I don't think the expertise is coming from the top down necessarily. I think everyone's trying to figure this out. And so a lot of those, like, hey, we learned this approach. We learned, a good way to leverage AI in this certain thing. And how do we do that? And I think managers are really that critical link, the middle managers, because you think about a 10,000 person company, as you use that example, right? The average employee is not hearing from the CEO every day, every week, every month, maybe every quarter, but that might even be, more frequently than some companies, right? But they are talking to the middle managers much more frequently, daily, weekly, monthly. There's much more interaction. So middle managers are really that critical link between, the what the company is trying to do in the employee experience. So again, the day-to-day questions about how do we use AI? The CEO says, hey, we want everyone using AI. Everyone gets X number of tokens. Everyone gets a ChatGPT account or whatever, right? It's the middle managers who are giving the direction in terms of, right, how do you take these tools and use them in your day-to-day work? How do you connect the work you're doing with AI to the broader business objectives? And as you described, how do you, are there different best practices that are being developed across the team that we can then share at our level?
So the bottom line here is team development, trust, and learning while having fun.
Yeah.
It's a toy.
It's interesting. One of the pieces of research we did found that 49% of executives believe that managers exceed expectations, but only 20% of frontline employees agree with that. So I think that highlights a pretty big gap. I think what to me it says there's lots of opportunity. There's lots of opportunity to grow and improve, and the role of middle managers in helping generate that team environment, how to provide confidence, how to provide that pole to hold on to in a storm, right? When everything around you seems like it's changing, and economic uncertainty, political challenges, natural disasters, AI, all these things that are kind of uncertain, like saying, look, this is what is certainty, providing that guiding light. And I think to me it highlights the fact that we a lot of people think, executives think that middle managers are doing the job, but most employees are saying, I'm not getting that and what I need. So I think there's a real opportunity there.
So in your role, if I may, take this to another level now, as VP Product Development for the corporation, for Insperity. So how are you using AI?
Yeah, I mean, so Insperity as an organization has a number of different things that we're doing with AI. We are, uh, you know, most, if not all employees, but a lot of employees have access to just general AI tools. We're using it in client communications to help make sure we're explaining things clearly. We're using AI and looking at how do we use it in some of our product development efforts. We're building AI capabilities that we're going to make available to clients. For me personally, I mean, I use it as a thought partner more than anything, right? So not, oh, take this email and clean up the language and make it 20% shorter. Like I'll do that every once in a while. But to me, it's really as I think through a problem or challenge, how do I synthesize information or how do I look at holes in my thinking for synthesizing information for competitive research. I think to me, it just makes me more productive. And I think sometimes there's just an idea that's in my head that I really can't. I'm trying to figure out the right way to express it. And sometimes just being able to like riff back and forth with an AI tool helps give me ways of saying something or explaining something that I hadn't thought of. I'm personally a big fan of like analogies. I love analogies as a way of explaining things. And sometimes I'm searching for the right analogy. So being able to get AI's help there. And then I think kind of an emerging area obviously is looking at, how do we use it for data aggregation, like in the product development, product management sense. There's just a lot of data signals we have, client feedback, customer feature requests. I'm getting input from sales. We're looking at what our competitors are doing. So being able to take all that unstructured information and right, is there a way we can analyze that and use it better to really understand how does that influence our product strategy going forward?
You use the word analogy. What does that mean to you? I mean, I want to break it down into more simple.
An analogy is like, oh no, that's a simile. You know, really, it's to me, it's just I've always kind of focused on that as a way of communication, right? I think people, let's go back to change. People have trouble sometimes understanding or adapting to things that are new. So if we can use it in the context of something they know, a, a, a product is like a house, and this role is like the carpenter, and this person is like the plumber, right? Being able to like translate a new concept into something they know really, I think, helps communicate an idea and also helps things stick. I think I'm pretty good at it, but I just have always gravitated to using analogies. And it's funny, sometimes the ones that you don't realize are going to resonate or stick with people, months later, years later, those are the things they remember.
So I say that because sometimes, including me, in the early days, what does that word mean? So it's like an example.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, so simple. Okay, so once again, you're building teamwork. And the goal is productivity, but that comes from getting everybody understanding that they don't have to be afraid of AI. They just learn how to use it and grow with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the example of so I need a 10-point letter for CEOs and maybe uh, a, a 3-paragraph thing to get team members to follow me. 2 different uses,
Mm-hmm.
and they spit it out. Now, I could probably figure that out eventually, but man,
Yeah.
that I don't get paid to do that. But
Well,
I need to do it.
yeah. I mean, or there's more value adding things you can be doing with your time, right? Like,
Yeah.
rewriting 4 pages into one is not the best value that you could be bringing to this world right now. So it's about how do
So
you
I
leverage
asked
these tools to
Gemini,
make you more
give it to
productive?
me,
Yeah.
and he or it did, and then I could use. I don't get rid of talent that didn't do that for me. I just say, okay, now here's a new tool. What would you like to do with this? And bing,
Yeah.
teamwork.
Yeah. I think it's like I said, I mean, I'm sure like there will, I'm sure, be cases where AI is going to take jobs. I personally believe some of the fears are a little overblown. I think a lot of it is, quite frankly, the talk is coming from um, people and companies that are looking to make a lot of money off of selling technology that you will pay for, and certainly some of that. But I think again, you look at, you know, with the introduction of the internet, right? There are certain businesses and industries that didn't necessarily go away, but changed significantly. You know, the mobile phone, smartphones, you know, probably hurt certain industries, but they sure as heck created a lot more new industries that didn't exist before. So again, there's always going to be new technologies. I think we are only scratching the surface of how AI can be used and can be helpful, and also some of the challenges and risks that come with it. It's very interesting. I'll say I've got 3 kids, 3 teenagers, and they have even among themselves, very different views on AI. You know, one's very thinks it's cool and is playing with a bunch of AI games. Another one is very against AI for environmental reasons and, you know, other reasons, and one is kind of in the middle. So, you know, I think generational shifts as Gen Z enters the workforce more, I think will also bring different perspectives. And, you know, I know in the news recently with some of like the graduation speeches where graduation speakers mentioned AI and they got a lot of boos and jeers, right? This is, you know, I think interesting to see how it will play out and the different perspectives. My personal view is like there's with any technology, there's hype, there's doom and gloom, there's the reality is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I thought we were going to be joined by Ron, but apparently he got something more important to do.
Sure. It's good
Anyway,
talking with you still. It's okay.
yeah, it's good. Okay, so let's talk about people, again, at your level, VP product development for a large company that's 40 years old, and it's multinational, right? Insperity is global.
Insperity, so the PEO concept is really a concept that only exists in the United States. So we mainly focus on companies that have employees in the US, either they're headquartered here or they have their international operations that here. We do have clients obviously that have employees and operations outside the US though.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you for picking up on my inability to say what I meant. So the professional employment organizations, that's an outsourced thing, right?
You know, I think the way we like to describe it is I think it's a partnership with our clients, right? I think when people hear outsourcing, again, they think, oh my gosh, my job's going away or someone else is taking my job. And in reality, it's, you know, again, I was over at the SHRM conference. I'll be going back after we get off this call. You know, I talked with a lot of companies, clients, non-clients, where they say, you know, hey, I've got one HR person supporting X number of employees, and they just can't do it all, right? I'm being asked to help with employee development. I'm being asked to help with training. I'm being asked to help with change management, but I'm also having to deal with benefits and leave management and tuition reimbursement, and they just are overwhelmed. And so, you know, we can take care and help with a lot of those more administrative compliance related services, mitigate some of the risk, and allow the HR folks that they have to be more value adding and focused more on that forward looking strategic HR. So I think for a lot of our clients, it's not about, you know, outsourcing things they're doing internally. It's more freeing, you know, doing things that they maybe are spending a lot of their time on, so that frees them up to do other things.
So as we come to a close here in the next few minutes, I really appreciate your time and info and playing this game with me. I media prep. That's just talking about what I do. Best practice is media prep. So I do a lot of cross-border stuff, and I recently had a speaker interview who specializes in being a fractional intercultural trainer person for hire. And so his background is Germany, and he relocated 20, 25 years ago to the US, to Atlanta. He's an American citizen now. But his specialty now is teaching primarily American business people about German-speaking nations, business people, and how different things are and how perceptions are. And the reason why that's a hot product for the guy. And is a customer of mine, so it's good for me, is that it's a common problem. Things aren't getting done because of misunderstanding and having no clue about how a manager has to be aware of the different personalities and
Mhm.
learning habits within their own company. You must see that all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking of a class I took as an undergrad, which was about international business. And literally every time we met, it was talking about a different country from, do they show up on time for meetings to, how do you present your business card and handshakes and things like that. At the time, I was a kid basically. And I'm like, this is interesting, but I'm not sure when I'll ever use this. And then later, obviously, as I started working with colleagues and partners and customers in other countries, yeah, I started recognizing it. I think to me, it's a broader, I don't say challenge, but it's just a broader need around how do we, work with people that are different than us, whether those people are different because of a different culture or just because they have different backgrounds. I mean, look, even in the US, there are very different cultures, there are very different personalities, engineers versus marketers versus salespeople versus finance people have different personalities as well, right? So I think, you know, there's very little that any business can do with one person working on their own, right? It all requires collaboration. And so the more people, the more different cultures and personalities you get in, the harder it is. And so again, I think that's where, you can take, um, I'll use an analogy, right? That you can take some of the best musicians in the world and put them together in a band, and that band will sound horrible because each musician thinks they're the best musician and thinks they should be in front and they should be, in the spotlight, and they have a different style of music. You could also take a bunch of, decent musicians that work really well together, that play together, that know each other's strengths and weaknesses and know how to work together, and you can make them sound amazing, right? And so in that analogy, right? Yes, we need good talent, but we also need good collaboration and cohesion. And again, coming back to what we were talking about earlier, I think a lot of times the middle managers are the ones that are creating that, trying to get that cohesion and trying to get those different cultures and understanding of different strengths and weaknesses to get them to work together.
Thank you, Jeff Lash, VP Product Development with Insperity Corporation. And your time is very valuable. I use for years, 20 years, I walked the floors of SHRM conventions and have had booths of my own before switching to media. So I thank you for your time. I'll send you a copy of this program for your own use, and I welcome your feedback when you get around to it.
Awesome. Thanks. Great talking with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to go back to, it was nice to have a little break from the expo floor. It's a little quiet. And now I'll go back to being in the throngs and being on my
Yeah,
feet for the rest of the day.
it's ready. Get ready for lunch.
Yeah. All right. Take care. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
ciao. Thank
Nice
you.
talking with you.
All right, this is Ed signing off from San Diego. You're on Global TV Talk Show. I welcome your feedback. You could reach me by this email, editor, Global Business News at gmail.com. Thank you very much. Ciao.